obviously, both the vice chair and I talked about deferred maintenance, and there's a rule of thumb, Mr. Director, in the private sector that you should be doing 2 to 4% of the value of your assets as a ongoing maintenance budget. Otherwise, you're going in the hole. It's hard to do all of the, it's hard to get a fix on what the value overall of the assets of the National Park Service, but it appears that we're below 1% now in terms of what we're doing in terms of maintenance. I guess I would start by saying defend that and reassure me about the future. You understand the concern here. It was not easy to get the Great American Outdoors Act through, and in this budgetary situation, I think it would be even more difficult. Plus, we don't have Rob Portman and Lamar Alexander with us. So let's talk about getting the maintenance budget right so that we're not digging the hole deeper in the hopes of a future Great American Outdoors Act.
You know, we're doing better calculations of how we're doing the deferred maintenance. That's first and foremost. We weren't really using industry standards. And when we look back and it travels across the United States, last year alone, I visited over 60 parks. I've seen more water treatment plants than I've ever planned to see in my life. But that's a good thing because water is extremely important to all of our visitors, ensuring that it's cool, clean, and potable. That being said, we also know that over the last 30, 40 years, the maintenance costs that you had been seeing in deferred maintenance really was just the Band-Aid effect, meaning our on-the-ground maintenance staff were looking at it on what would it keep just to keep it going, rather than looking at what it would take to do surgery on this particular matter. As we've calculated that maintenance, it did, in fact, double in price, and that was also a surprise to me. But I now trust the data that actually is being inputted into the system to better manage this issue.
I think we should point out that suddenly there wasn't a lot more deferred maintenance. It was a different way of accounting for it and determining what the amount was.
Absolutely, sir. And it was really looking at more of the surgical approach. What will it take to really repair this for sustainability for the next 50, 70, 80 years? And that's why that price increased.
But I'm not, I want to focus on the boring old operation budget and how much is in there for maintenance ongoing, not deferred maintenance, but just maintenance so that we're not deferring. My worry is that in this budget, there's not enough for ongoing sustained maintenance, which is only going to make a deferred maintenance problem get bigger in the future.
Yes, our cyclic maintenance is an issue we're looking at. We're going to delve more deeply into how we can ensure that they're...
And that number's flat for the last 3 years.
Yes, sir. You know, we have 75,000 different assets. 60% are very unique, you know, monuments, memorials, such as the Statue of Liberty and others. And looking at how we do that cyclic maintenance, we need to dig deeper in that and figure out what those true costs are so that we can more accurately come back to you and talk to you about that.
Well, this budget has already been submitted. It's going to be worked through the appropriations process, but I sincerely urge you, the next budget, we should see a growth in annual maintenance in order to prevent the development of further deferred maintenance in the future.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Changing the subject, on staffing, how are you doing on recruiting? Every business I talk to is having difficulty recruiting. Are you able to fill these new positions that we've authorized?
Thank you for the question, Senator. You know, that is one of the issues that is a challenge for us. We're using every tool available in our tool chest to be able to recruit and bring in the best and the brightest and the most diverse workforce that really reflect who America is in our national park system. That being said, we do have some impediments. The market has been very tight for all employers. We're trying to figure out our best ways to entice folks to come into the service. In that end, with the great support of the Inflation Reduction Act and the $500 million, we're bringing in over 30 recruiters to go out and meet people where they're at in colleges and trade schools to be able to start recruiting those folks to come in. And we're looking again at exactly what tools we might need enhancement on and plan on coming back and talking with you directly about that.
I also serve on the Armed Services Committee, and the military is having exactly the same problem, although interestingly, except for the Space Force, they're oversubscribed. That doesn't apply, but perhaps it does in a sense. One of the things that they're talking about is that mission is an important part of recruitment. It's not just about money or benefits, and it seems to me you're not defending the country, but the mission of the national parks is something that should be attractive to young people as a career. Is that emphasized in your recruiting efforts?
Absolutely. I think our best recruiters are our folks in uniform in the green and gray. They show and demonstrate the passion that they have for the Organic Act and our mission as a service. And that does attract a lot of folks. I would say the folks that we have recruited over the last year and the new staff that I've met out in the field, they talk about being mission-driven and the work that we have done since 1916 and will continue to do. And I think that has been a very attractive way of recruiting new members.
Final area of concern is housing. Recruiting housing relates, I know, in Acadia, we've just passed a land swap that will, a land change that will allow additional housing to be developed. I take it that this is a problem across the country as you visit these parks.
Absolutely. The issue is really a factor of both quantity of housing units as well as our quality. And we have projects planned that will address rehabilitating existing housing facilities where units are in disrepair and obsolete and not currently suitable for employees. By example, Chaco Cultural National Historic Park, we have existing housing units that are unlivable. A proposed line item construction project will demolish the existing structure and build a new multiplex units with a bed-for-bed replacement. At Mesa Verde National Park, a project will rehab and stabilize existing foundations and building envelopes of historic residences. While we address these projects, we are also evaluating the quantity necessary for the workforce. The housing market, as we all are very much aware of, has been a challenge for many of us in recent years, and especially due to COVID, natural disasters, and affected in other ways of where we're at. And so with the increase of the $7 million, which would bring over $15 million to allow us to do additional leasing and upgrades and building, we're investing also nearly $100 million in fiscal year 24's proposed budget on the housing issue.
You mentioned those parks, Mesa Verde and Chaco. 20 years ago right now, my family and I were on a round-the-country RV trip for 5.5 months, and we visited, I think, 17 national parks, and they were I thought my kids were sort of bored, but then when we went into Yellowstone and a herd of buffalo crossed the road, they just came alive. That was one of the highlights of the trip. So thank you for the work that you're doing, Director Sampson. We'll come back and have a few more questions in a second round. Senator Daines.